Denver's population is changing, and not necessarily in the way that you want to see it. It's shrinking. But one demographic is growing, and we're talking about the homeless. There were nearly 5,000 people unsheltered in Denver last year, the most ever, even as the city spent more money than ever to tackle homelessness, $250 million. Some of the state's top leaders are hoping to change that trajectory. As Sean Boyd reports, they heard from an expert this week about a different homeless strategy that comes from lived experience.
They are hard to look at, the people who live on the street. Hard, too, not to think about how they ended up here. While most major cities, including Denver, have addressed homelessness as a housing crisis,
I'm humbled by all this.
Tom Wolf will tell you it is primarily a drug crisis. He ought to know. He lived on the streets of San Francisco for 6 months after becoming addicted to painkillers following a surgery.
It eventually spiraled into heroin, homelessness, fentanyl, and near death. I had lost my wife, my kids, my job, my money, everything that was of value to me, I had lost.
He would be dead, he says, if he hadn't been arrested.
I'm blessed. Blessed.
He was in jail long enough to get sober and get help from the Salvation Army, where he now works as a recovery advocate.
I've tried to turn my negative experience into something positive to give back to the community. It's part of my living amends to my family and to my community in recovery, and it gives me great strength to be able to go out there and share my story.
Not only to drug addicts, but policymakers and business leaders, in hopes of saving cities like Denver from becoming the next San Francisco, where homeless encampments have taken over entire city blocks and drug use is rampant. Wolf says it's the result of good-intentioned policies that have failed the people they're meant to save. Policies that regard the decriminalization of drugs as humane and preconditions to housing as heartless.
2/3 of those overdose deaths this year in San Francisco have happened inside at a fixed address, and many of them inside permanent supportive housing. Compassion comes in many forms. Accountability is one of those forms of compassion. I'm not saying that we have to put everyone in jail, but accountability has to be a piece of this.
While Denver isn't San Francisco, Wolf says it's headed in that direction.
You can build all the tiny homes that you want, but if you continue with this policy of allowing people to use drugs openly, having tent encampments just on sidewalks, you're just inviting more people to come. Where we're at this crisis level with homelessness and drugs, where we can no longer debate about which way is the best way. The answer should just be yes to just about everything, which includes arresting people, which includes holding fentanyl dealers accountable, which includes mandated treatment for those who need it, which includes funding just drug treatment and detox, and yes, that includes permanent housing too.
5 years sober this month and back with his wife and kids, Tom Wolf is here to sound an alarm.
And there's so many people out here on the street right now whose lives aren't over, and they deserve another chance. But we as a community have to help show them the way.
In Denver, Sean Boyd covering Colorado First.